Good morning, everyone. I'm your interim minister, Fred Wooden, and I'm here in front of our wonderful building and that great sign so you can see all the places we've been. On this, the 27th of December, the days after Christmas. And one of the reasons I'm glad I'm here and not in Michigan is that often the 26th and the 27th are the days when people start throwing their Christmas trees out on the trash heap. And I'm just ready to start celebrating. Because you see, I believe in that old 12 days of Christmas thing, that there's more than one day worth honoring. In fact, I think that's a great practice we all might get used to, because it isn't just one day that matters, Christmas, or one day of the week where we worship Sunday. It's any day and any time and anywhere. So perhaps that's the lesson we can derive from this season of Yuletide, of Christmastide, that it is not a moment or a place, but a presence and a being present to it. We're going to make this a time for giving and receiving, a time for revering and wondering. That's why we're here every week, to rekindle the hope that every day has something worthy of our worship and our reverence. And to help that happen, I'm going to invite my partner in ministry, Marcy Bodwin, to share the announcements and then to gather us for a time for all ages, as I remember.
Good morning, everyone, and I hope you all have enjoyed your holiday season so far. We don't have any announcements today, except to say that there's no faith formation classes again today. We're still on winter break. We'll start up again next Sunday. I have a special video for you put together by a wide variety of our community members, but I want you to make a point to look for your staff members. Do you know who we all are? So in addition to Fred and myself, you're going to find Joe Martin, who's in charge of our maintenance. Also Laura Gustafson, who's our newish administrator, and Haley Wynn, who is our faith formation assistant, but she's been around for a couple of years, so you'll know her. So enjoy this video. Join us now for our community reading of the poem by Clement C. Moore, A Visit from St. Nicholas, also known as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas when all through the house not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there.
The children were all nestled, all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads.
And Mama in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brain for a long winter's nap.
When out on the lawn there rose such a clatter, I sprang from my bed to see what was the matter.
What to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer.
With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick.
More rapid than eagles his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called them by name.
Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen.
To the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all.
As leaves that before the wild hurricane fly, when they meet with an obstacle mount to the sky.
So up on the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too.
And then, in a twinkling, I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing, each little hoof.
As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound.
He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his pack.
His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry, his cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry.
His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was white as the snow.
A stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke it encircled his head like a wreath.
He had a broad face and a little round belly.
That shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly.
That sucked when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly.
He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him, in spite of myself.
A wink of his eye, a twist of his head, soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread.
He spoke not a word and went on to his work, and filled up the stockings, and then turned with a jerk, laying a finger aside his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose.
Then he sprang to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he rode out of sight, "Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night." I think it might be time to talk about the offering. Am I right about that? I think so. Well, as you can tell, I'm out here in the courtyard, which in other times is not only filled with preschoolers that are here Monday through Friday, but with our own schoolers on Sunday, reminding us that the work of spiritual growth, it goes on all the time. Not only for adults, not only for children, but for adults as well. And you can see how the grass is growing here because we've tended to it as we want to tend to our youngsters and ourselves. What has this to do with the offering? Well, it's the result of tending to it that matters. Right after the Christmas Eve service on Thursday, I got a plate full of cookies from dear Mary Rothschild, and I've been nibbling at them ever since, a gift that is giving me pleasure for days on end. And these rooms here around this courtyard give things far beyond Sunday morning. They equip our young people especially with the confidence, character, and knowledge that enable them to live in the world fully as themselves. And that's why this is about an offering, because that doesn't happen by itself. We make it happen. We make it happen through our presence and our support. And as we come to the end of the year and the end of the pledge year in particular, I want you to know that everything you do toward helping this congregation thrive pays off in the way that watering the grass does. So if you can, and I think you should, make sure that you support this institution with your capacities to give. You can text, you can go to our website, you can mail a check, give me a phone call. Whatever it takes to help you do the best you can for this community that gives so much all year long. It's like a plate of cookies, after all. You don't get it all at once. You eat them now and then, and they brighten every day. And now we'll enjoy some music as you think about your support for this community, what I was going to call Fountain Street Church, which is my former church, but for Valley Unitarian Universalist congregation, so that we can continue to be present this day and every day. So let's run that music, which I'll tell you what it was when it's all done.
Reasons for the season, reasons for the season.
Solstice, Saturnalia, Christmas, Hanukkah, Panchaganapati, Bodhi Day, Yule, Modronect, Shabbat Yalda, Kwanzaa, Sol Invictus, Dongshi, Soya. Out of darkness comes the sun every new December. In the name of peace for all to come, Earth's people join together.
Reasons for the season, reasons for the season.
Saints come hither, gods and goddesses, Basil, Nicholas, Lucia, Saturn, Amoratsu, Jai Ganesha, Odin, Spider-Woman, Old Ra, New Day born of long, cold night, raised in celebration. Bring the coming of the light to the soul of every nation.
Reasons for the season. Reasons for the season.
La Befana flies the night, Santa Claus his sleigh. Emmanuel beneath star bright, and Israel's lamps aflame. Tapers lit for all to see, voices blend in blessed be. Winter yields to coming spring, and faith is kept forever green.
Reasons for the season. Reasons for the season. Reasons for the season. Reasons for the season.
I'm going to ask you a favor as we move into our time of prayer. I'm going to ask you not to post in the chat for a while. Just be in a place of receiving. What you heard earlier and what I'm going to share with you now were things we had hoped to share with you on Christmas Eve, but like the story turns out, nothing turns out as expected, so we're offering them now. Every Christmas Eve for as long as I've been a clergy person, I've read a poem by Gilbert Keith Chesterton, a portion of it because it's quite long. And it describes the experience of the Nativity from his perspective. And it seems to me it says more to us than we perhaps remember. So I want you to listen to this poem, and then I'll offer a few words, prayerful words. And then following that, we'll enjoy some really beautiful music that was prepared for us for this particular supper, that was prepared for Christmas Eve, but we couldn't see it. It will be a caroling medley by the combined choir of UUCP and our own choir. And I've seen it, and it's great. So now that this is set up, poem, prayer, music. And I want you to receive this as a gift and just let it be there. Here's the poem. There fared a mother driven forth out of an inn to roam, in the place where she was homeless. All are now at home. The crazy stable close at hand, with shaking timber and shifting sand, grew a stronger thing to abide and stand than the square stones of Rome. For some are homesick in their homes and strangers under the sun, and lay their heads in a foreign land whenever the day is done. Here we have battle and blazing eyes and chance and honor and high surprise. But our homes are under miraculous skies where the Yule tale was begun. To an open house in the evening, home shall all of us come, to an older town than Eden and a taller town than Rome, to the end of the way of the wandering star, to the things that cannot be and are, to the place where God was homeless. All of us are at home. There is a notion, I believe, that we live our lives to go home. I think it was Ram Dass who said that we are each and all walking each other home. Wherever that home is, it is larger than where we are now. And that is the spiritual life, to enter into that largeness of belonging, of being known and welcomed home. Sometimes we feel far from that place, be it poverty, illness, estrangement, loneliness. Home can be very far away indeed. For those who carry those burdens and more, we pray, because we too have carried burdens and will in the future. I could name names, but that's not important. We know who they are, and sometimes we don't, but they are dear to us, named or nameless. For those whose hearts are broken, whose spirits are low at this high point of the year, whose fears are large when we most wish to be safe, we open the door of our hearts each week, because all of us are walking each other home. And if we find one along the way, we should hold out our hand and walk with them all the way home. With those thoughts in mind, we prepare our hearts to enjoy the very special prayerful gift that is that prepared by our choir and the congregation north of us, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Phoenix, who will remind us of why joy still matters. So I was reminded that I walked right past the welcome. See, I told you I was bad at this because I was outside and kind of drunk on the outdoors. Barbara Face, we can't go a moment longer without lighting our chalice. Could you help us do that?
Yes, I'd be happy to. And did you want me to also skip the welcome I had prepared?
Skip nothing.
So she said awkwardly, "Good morning."
No, I'm the one that screwed up here. Come on.
Good morning and welcome to Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. My name is Barbara and I'm the lay presence in the pulpit today. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, even though I'm sure many of you are experiencing Zoom fatigue, especially after a Zoom-filled holiday. But we create this space to be together in spirit, and we're grateful you've chosen to spend this last Sunday morning of 2020 with our spiritual community. I want to let you know that if you need a listening ear, and these days who doesn't, our pastoral care associates are available to chat with you virtually and offer assistance. You can find this week's contact information in the chat. Roz, would you be able to post that again? Thanks so much. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you need a strong shoulder. And now, please join me in saying our chalice lighting blessing. You are, of course, welcome to light your own chalice with me as I light mine. We kindle this flame, symbol of our faith, for the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of love, which calls us to work for justice. We also want to offer special welcome to anyone who is curious about Unitarian Universalism and Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation and has chosen to join us this morning. We're pleased you're here and encourage you to stay after our service and have a conversation with our interim minister, the Reverend Fred Wooden. Please also consider sending us an email, letting us know of your interest in our community so that we can connect with you personally. And Reverend Wooden, as you already know, is in our pulpit today. He's had a very busy few days for sure. And the title of his sermon today is Up on the Rooftop, which he promises to be lighthearted. And that's something we all need as we approach the end of a year we won't soon forget. Our Christmas Eve service was compromised by technical difficulties, and Reverend Fred and Worship Associate Mary Rothschild really did a fantastic job filling in the gaps. However, we weren't able to broadcast the lovely music pieces we had planned. As a result, we're using them today because so many people gave so much of their time and talent to make each piece possible, and we wanted to be sure and share them with you. Big thank you goes to all the musicians, technicians, and music associates who put it all together. So that means our service today has a bit of a Christmas feel, which suits me just fine, and we hope you enjoy it too. So we've almost made it through to the end of a most bizarre year. Now, I know COVID doesn't care about the calendar, but I can't help breathing a little easier and welcoming 2021 with open arms, a rolled up sleeve, if you know what I mean, and lots of hope. Even though I admit to usually not paying much attention to the hoopla of the coming of yet another new year. Truthfully, this holiday season was a bust for me. I didn't decorate. It was mostly giftless, and I feel guilty about that. It's not that I was a Grinch or a Scrooge. I just didn't have the spirit, even though I had plenty of time. Maybe some of you can relate. In my inward journey, the color orange bubbled up to the top of my heart. Yes, that's right, the color orange in a time of red and green. You see, I'm old enough to have experienced a time when the available food was kind of seasonal. We didn't have grocery stores filled with fresh fruit and vegetables grown in other parts of the world and available year round. We relied on canned, both home canned and store-bought canned, and frozen food items during both Thanksgiving and Christmas. Now, I'm not complaining or suggesting it was awful, it was just different. And the changes that have happened over the course of time are a luxury. I suppose you could look at cookbooks from the 50s and 60s to see what I mean. I remember being excited every year when the kiwis showed up all the way from Australia and were all the rage. During the holiday season, citrus fruits weren't all that common to find in Minnesota. Well, probably fresh and tasty citrus wasn't much available at any time of year because it was too expensive or not very tasty being dried out from the long journey from Florida or Arizona. At any rate, that's my memory. Who knows what reality was? In my family, we opened gifts on Christmas Eve. And these were the real gifts, the big gifts. We knew what our grandparents, parents, and cousins had given us. Christmas morning was a stocking filled with little things left from Santa. The gifts from Santa weren't the big gifts, but they were often the cool things that kept us going through the year, and obviously for me, a whole lifetime. One year, or maybe a few years in a row, the most exciting Santa gift was a huge orange that completely filled the toe of our stockings. I remember the shock of the heaviness of the Santa stocking and the wonder about what it could be. Finding that lovely, huge orange was truly a miracle. Our bedstafar, which is grandfather in Danish, would open his knife and carefully help us remove the thick skin. And our bedstemor, grandmother in Danish, would spread a large piece of newspaper on our laps so we could tear apart the pieces of orange without making a sticky mess. I really don't think anything I've eaten for many, many years can compare to the thrill of biting into those juicy orange slices. Everything about it was a miracle. The soft pebbled skin, the white of the pit, the serrated knife, the newspaper, and the taste of bliss that leaked out the sides of our mouths. It was every bit as amazing as the hand-cranked 4th of July ice cream. So yeah, The color orange has bubbled up to the surface of my heart this year for its innocence and sweetness during a time when our daily reality is perhaps not so sweet or so innocent. I'm wishing you sweetness and innocence as we approach the new year. Blessed be. And now, I'm not sure which music piece we're going to have, but I think we're going to have a music piece.
No, not that. Well, that was fantastic. And it was so great to see so many familiar faces and unfamiliar faces. And I'm feeling very sheepish that I ran right past Barbara and the chalice. Clearly, the holidays took more out of me than I gave them credit for. So with my apologies, I'm going to turn now to a story. And I hope that I can enjoy your forbearance and even your forgiveness, especially Barbara. My apologies to you sincerely. It's been my custom for a lot of years to deliver an original short story on Christmas Eve, because how much more can one say about a story that everyone knows so well? And after all, the occasion for Christmas Eve is itself a story. But after a few years, I discovered sometimes Christmas Eve happens on a Friday or a Saturday. And what are you going to say on Sunday? And that's where we are now. So some years ago, I found myself writing about the same characters that I created for Christmas Eve. And this is one of those occasions. On Christmas Eve, I described a migrant family stuck in a sleet storm in West Virginia at some point in the proximal past. I'm picking up their story a day after. "I'm hungry," Midge wailed as he woke up. That wasn't his real name, of course. Image Boutwell Irwin was the name on the birth certificate. And Millie, who was 5 when he was born, mispronounced it as Midge, and that's what stuck. Now, he was 5 and voracious, and Midge was the family alarm clock, arousing them every dawn with the same message: I'm hungry. But today that plea would have to wait some time for an answer. It took them each a few seconds to remember where they were and where they weren't. They weren't in Ashland, Kentucky with their uncle, their aunt, and the family around them. They weren't in the VW bus or the tent where they slept as they moved from place to place. They were in an abandoned house somewhere in West Virginia, a hovel that they stumbled across the night before when forced off the road by sleet, night, and an overheating engine. Ben, Dad, muttered crossly as he pulled his clothes on. The smoke from his first cigarette felt good until he gasped and coughed. Millie hunched down into her shoulders at the sickening sound, scared and angry at the same time. Ben didn't see this, of course, heading for the hearth to get the fire going. He took a little kerosene, but the fire did start and the flue did draw. We don't have a thing to eat, Joe, his wife, reminded him, but he already knew. So Ben snapped back, I'll figure something out, okay? And he lit another cigarette. Best see if I can figure out what's wrong with the car. That didn't answer the question of food and the other question of money. But Ben might be able to do something about the car. He couldn't. While there were patches of blue in the morning sky, the sleet and ice covered everything overnight, including the bus, with almost half an inch of ice. It was a 1962 VW bus with a sunroof, but it was frozen tight all over, including the cover of the engine. He came in and said, it's frozen solid. I can't get into it. I'm going to find out where we are. Maybe there's a house nearby where I can get to a telephone. Joe nodded with resigned agreement, but she resented being left alone with 2 hungry children and being unable to get to the few things they carried with them in their migrant life. The sun had come out, and after the kids were dressed, Joe noticed that the ice was melting in the light. The children were restless, so she called out, hey kids, we're going outside, and cleaned some ice off the car. Gingerly, they walked out onto the slick porch. With mincing steps, they descended to the yard and the bus. Joe took Ben's flashlight and rapped it against the ice. It cracked. With ever colder hands, she clawed the pieces away until she could open the door. Inside, she dug out fresh clothes, a little more toilet paper, coloring books, an old National Enquirer, and hoped to turn up a scrap of food she might have forgotten. Millie and Midge were skating on the frozen dirt road. They were delighted with the ice world where grass broke and forsythia shattered, where icicles hung low and long from the roof, and the brightness of the reflected light made them squint. As the sun warmed, sheets of ice broke loose from the roof and rattled down. Millie, Joe shouted, take this bucket and put some ice in it. We need the water. The 2 kids made a game of breaking icicles from the house and crushing them into the bucket. Joe watched them from inside the bus, relieved the children had something to do other than whine and complain. She also noticed 2 paper sacks that Ben had wedged into the crevices between the seats. A rumble crunch of tires approached and slowed. Out by the road, Ben got out of a small truck. He turned and said loud enough for Joe to hear, thanks and Merry Christmas to you too. He hurried down the driveway, almost falling on the ice several times, but never quite. I got lucky, Joe. There was a big accident on the highway last night. Man, that's horrible. How could that be good luck? Well, yeah, the lucky part was the undertaker doesn't have enough help, so he wants me to work for a couple of days at $50 a day. Can you believe that, Joe? $50 a day. But what about Christmas, she said. Well, we couldn't get there today anyway, you know that. But the kids, they really need Christmas. I know, darling, but some things just can't be helped. You tell them, okay? You tell them, she said. Ben called Millie and Midge inside. Well, kids, it's like this. The car is busted and we can't get it fixed before tomorrow. but I got this great job and that'll give me $50 a day until then. And I got us some food. What about Santa? Midge interrupted. He won't find us here, Millie explained. And Ben didn't know what to say. Well, I've got to get to the funeral parlor if I want to keep that job, he said as he walked past Joe. What about the kids? Joe whispered angrily, but Ben pretended not to hear. She made peanut butter sandwiches with the stuff Ben brought back, and at least Midge and Millie were content for a while. Joe said they had to stay inside because it was still so slippery and cold, but in a short while they were screaming and picking on each other, and she was fed up. Outside, both of you. Do whatever you want. Just give me a few minutes peace. The kids thumped out and Joe flopped in a tattered easy chair that was left behind by the last owners. Outside on the porch, Midge began to cry. Knock it off, crybaby, Millie said. But I want Santa to come and he's not. Well, maybe if he knew where we were, it would help. But how? Midge asked, unconvinced. They stood on the porch for a while, Millie absently flicking a few remaining icicles off. Midge sniffled. There's a big field out back, Millie remembered. So what, said Midge. We could start a big fire. There's plenty of wood out there. No, that wouldn't work. Millie fell silent again. Hey, I've got it. We'll make an arrow in the snow so Santa knows somebody's inside. But how will Santa know the arrow means him? Asked Midge. Well, we'll spell out his name too, okay? They tramped out back, crunching the ice as they went. Some logs were too big and slippery for them to move, but with the smaller pieces, they gradually lined up an arrow pointing at the house. At the base of the arrow, Millie started lining up Santa, and then they thought it would be better to put the word here in front so Santa knew that it was here that he should stop. And so they laid out their message in a milky field of white in letters several feet tall, HEERSANTA. Millie and Midge stood back admiring their work for some time until the wind and a fresh blanket of cloud made it too cold to remain outside, so they hurried in. Ma, see what we did? Millie dragged Joe to the window so she could make it out. Santa's got to see that. He'll come for sure, said Midge. Sure, honey, I'm sure he will, said Joe. Ben got back quite late. It was after dark, and just as more snow and sleet was starting to fall, Joe knew what he would say. You know, maybe we should stay for a while. Maybe this is a steady job. It never was. Ben never stopped thinking it might be, though. How much money you have left? Joe asked, knowing it would be less than $50. Plenty, he said. How much? We'll talk later. Right now I'm hungry. I'll bet we're all hungry, he said, getting louder, scooping up Midge in his arms. Look in my pocket. Go ahead. Midge reached into Ben's pants and found a Hershey bar. He squealed, and before Millie could ask, Ben pulled another one out for her. Joe shook her head, and it could have meant either defeat or forgiveness, maybe both. Over her shoulder came a warm breath and a peace offering. Forever yours. You always remember, said Joe. And it's true, darling, forever yours. You are a lot of talk, Ben Irwin. Now, where is the rest of the money? He handed her $30-some and change. What happened to the rest? We'll talk later, he said. We'll talk now, she said, in a voice sharp and loud. The children stopped talking and the room was suddenly quiet. Millie heard the sleet on the rooftop. Joe turned her back, and Ben gathered Millie and Midge around that old easy chair and told them an exotic and improvised tale about his day. Soon after supper, which was nothing but more peanut butter sandwiches and a glass of milk, they put the children in their sleeping bags in front of the fireplace. But it's Christmas Eve, Pa. Do we have to go to bed now? Tell us more about the dead bodies, said Millie. Yeah, you must go to bed, and no, I'm not going to tell you any more. We all need our rest if we're going to get to Unc and Aunt's tomorrow. What are you talking about, Ben? Said Joe. Well, I mean, after working tomorrow, we'll start out. The weather's supposed to be warmer, and a mechanic in town figures it's just an oil leak, and if I add a quart every few miles, it'll get us home. So cross your fingers we can leave after supper tomorrow and be there by midnight. Yay, said Millie and Midge, jumping out of their sleeping bags. So go to bed, Ben ordered, and they hurried back into their sleeping bags. But after a few moments, Midge began to whimper, but we'll still miss Santa. Yeah, Millie jumped in. It's cloudy and snowy. He won't be able to see us. Santa's a pretty smart guy. Don't you worry now, said Ben. Joe shot him an insistent look. As soon as they fell asleep, she said, let's go outside. There, Ben lit a cigarette. Joe snatched it from his mouth and leaned close. What happened to the money, Ben? Or should I ask, how long did it take to drink it? Maybe we can't give them Christmas now, but if you go and spend it on your liver, they'll have nothing. You should see what they did out back today. I saw, and I swear I had nothing to drink. Did you look inside those bags I saw you saw in the car? If you did, well, let me show you. He went out to the car and brought back 2 wrinkled bags. See, here's some jacks for Millie and a yo-yo. I got a cowboy pistol for Midge. It's really a squirt gun, but don't it look good? And after you told me about the fire truck, I got this. And he pulled out a large, garish red plastic fire truck from the bag. Cost $6, said Ben. But like you said, we just can't break his heart. Joe smiled a weak, accepting smile. I knew there was some reason I married you, but what about Millie? That's not very much. Ben sighed and shook his head. The fire was all but out when Millie awoke in the middle of the night. From her place, she could see the forms of Mom and Dad and Midge on the floor, motionless. Millie was about to get up and look out the window when she heard a clattering sound on the roof. Sleet was falling, yes, but it sounded like there was something more, a thumping, a crunching. Was it a walking sound? Millie took a sharp breath. Could it be? She had her doubts, but right now there was that noise, and it was very real, and ice pellets were falling down the chimney. There was definitely something or someone up there. She scrunched her eyes closed, knowing that you weren't supposed to see Santa on Christmas Eve. Her heart pounded with each crunching step above her. And then it was morning. Instead of his usual alarm, Midge was shouting, Santa was here. He found us. Beside her, Millie found a yo-yo and some jacks, another candy bar, and a note tied around it. Dear Millie, thanks for your message out back. I might have missed you. Sorry there's not more. Love, Santa. There it was, in black and white. Who cares if it was only a yo-yo and some jacks? Santa left them, absolutely, and he wrote her a letter, too, thanking her. Merry Christmas, Millie shouted to Ben, who was already up and about to leave for work. He paused in the door and said, Merry, but just as he was about to finish, he sneezed 3 times. Christmas, 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 it sounded to her. But they were really only sneezes. It was, in fact, just a sneeze. And there ends the story. Now, with that story in mind, I think it's time for us to sing, if I'm not mistaken. Do we have a hymn that we're going to cue up at this point? I'm just checking out because clearly I can't remember what we're supposed to do and when.
I believe it's the Silent Night.
Yes, it is, Barbara. And this is something we recorded for Christmas Eve. And what's more, many of you helped to make it. So it is not only to sing, it is to hear. And we are grateful that we can share it with you now.
All is gone.
And now, words of Howard Thurman that I was going to give you on Christmas Eve, but they apply every day of the year. When the song of the angels is stilled, when the star in the sky is gone, when the kings and princes are home, when the shepherds are back with their flock, the work of Christmas begins. To find the lost, to heal the broken, to feed the hungry, to release the prisoner, to rebuild the nations, to bring peace among the peoples of the world, to make music in the heart. Amen.